3, 2, 1, and we're live. Joined today by Matthew Taylor of On Audience. How you doing, buddy?
Very well. Good to see you, Mars. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm tired. I'm a new father, so that's an interesting experience.
Lots of late nights.
Lots of late nights, lots of early mornings. This is a particularly early morning. But yeah, it's all going well.
For me as well, I've not got the same excuse to back up.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. You're my first guest on the Hot Coffee Consulting podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited, mate. So, yeah, look forward to it.
So, mate, talk to me. Tell me about your career path. Tell me about how you got to On Audience.
Yeah, of course. So, I've been in media about 10 plus years now, just over. I first, when I came into media, started actually in radio, which was quite interesting. So,
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so a bit of an interesting one for me. I basically was selling, obviously, radio airtime to like the agency AV teams and radio teams, which actually kind of sat together.
Who were you working with?
So I worked for a company called First Radio Sales, who essentially are the local radio specialists. So they combine all of the local radio stations across the UK and then sell it as like a network sale for large advertisers, basically.
The ad network before the ad network.
Exactly, within radio. So I did that for a while. So I was working with some of the big agencies like Aegis, maybe Caravision, and a few smaller agencies as well, like some radio specialists. And then, so I did that for about 4 years before I actually moved into digital. So,
how many of those people that you used to work with in those radio teams do you see on the circuit today in digital? None?
It's an interesting question. I mean, a few, yeah. I mean, radio is quite a small part of the overall media landscape. So I think it was, when I was in it, it was accounting for about 5 or 6% of total media spend. Mm-hmm. So only a small portion, but I think as the whole kind of landscape's evolved and changed and programmatic's become at the forefront of pretty much everything now, I think, those AV teams that were traditionally buying TV only, and some of those guys were the radio specialists, they moved into actually buying VOD and video as well.
Yeah.
So, now everything's programmatically driven. These guys are becoming knowledgeable about programmatic as well. And they're buying, in programmatic or digital video essentially. So, I see quite a few of these guys who have moved from those traditional TV teams into programmatic teams within agencies, or have become like a programmatic video specialist. So,
well, you can get programmatic audio now, right? Because
exactly.
We were working with Bow a couple of years ago. They were working on programmatic audio insertion with AdsWiz. And then there's is it Trident? It's the audio ad serving technology. So that's quite an interesting space.
Yeah, everything's evolved massively since then. So, just in that short space of about 7 years, things are really, and that's just media in general, right? It just, everything moves very quickly and things evolve and change. But, radio has become really interesting. As you said, it's very audio driven. There's a couple of companies out there who are, looking at creating like radio or audio DMPs as well. So it's changed massively since I was in it.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so radio, then where?
Yeah, and then I saw everything moving into digital, so I wanted to kind of dip my toe into the water there. So joined a company called Crimtan.
Yeah.
Back in 2012.
Dude, that must have been super early in Crimtan's history.
Well, I think they've been running at the time for about 3 years, maybe 4 years.
Oh, really?
They probably had about a year or two before I joined. They've actually started to grow massively. And at the time we were talking about DMPs, which was, very early doors, and people were saying, what's a DMP? I don't get it. It was almost at a point where the DMP wasn't part of the overall media mix.
Yeah.
We were going out to market saying we've got DMP technology, we segment user data and actually run campaigns for advertisers and managed service based on their KPI.
Right.
So, it was still very early days, and it was a whole education piece of going out to agencies, going out to clients, talking about how programmatic was at the time, or how it had become since that traditional kind of legacy ad network model, where obviously inventory was just being aggregated, and networks like Adconium were going out and kind of selling that on their behalf by verticals. Yeah. So it was a new space. It was exciting for me. It gave me a really good ground and understanding of programmatic and the journey from the the SSP to the DSP and kind of really kind of getting stuck in.
And technology.
And really important. And again, things have changed massively since then. So at that time, we were going out and speaking to advertisers, and it was at a time when the likes of Quantcast and Rocket Fuel, obviously now Seismic, were still at their, not infancy, but still growing. Remember their US businesses that come to the UK and are still kind of getting traction with advertisers and really expanding and growing.
Yeah, they're household names now, but it's strange to think that 5 to 10 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so a little bit of a stint at Crimtan, and then I met you when you were working with Venice. Yeah.
So that was directly after Crimtan. So Crimtan being kind of that ad tech business with proprietary technology, data. I thought it'd be interesting to go to the kind of publisher side. So Venice don't own any inventory, but are a really fantastic business at kind of aggregating publishers' inventory exclusively within the gaming space.
Yeah.
They're taking console gaming, casual gaming, kids content, like kids gaming. They aggregate all of that, manage it through their ad server.
So it's a more traditional ad network.
It's a traditional ad network, but they've kind of that. I wouldn't say they're definitely not an ad network. They're more of like a kind of a sales house kind of exclusive representation business.
Okay.
So they do everything for these publishers. A lot of these guys are. They're not the traditional tier 1 Daily Mails, Guardians. They're more kind of middle of the road, but premium within their environment. So, gaming has become huge now. Like as a market, I think from a revenue perspective, it's actually bigger or grosses more revenue than the film industry now.
Yep.
So it's huge. So, that was at a time again when advertisers were unsure about touching gaming inventory, but again, things have changed. So it's now premium.
Gaming is massive, insane. Like the amount of inventory that they're driving through that ecosystem is crazy. I used to game a lot. I don't game half as much as I used to. I'm a dad now, so probably never going to pick up my Xbox controller ever again. But
I think also when you get in the real world and start work, it's pretty difficult to find the time, right?
It's true. But yeah, it's crazy now. I mean, the fact that it goes straight to the device for a start, and you can download the games and you can access them, right there and then, just opens up. Because you and I are both from a generation where you'd go down to Blockbuster, you would pick up a game, you would have it for the weekend, and it was very physical. Now it's a complete digital economy.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to Claude, one of the guys on my team, he was saying that he was speaking to his son, he was going to get his son a game, and he's from a provincial town in France. And so getting a game when he was a kid was a 3-day expedition, and there's a 25% chance of actually getting the game that he wanted to get.
Right.
Whereas his son just has a completely different experience of that economy and just gets access whenever he needs and wants access to whatever game he wants.
Exactly. I mean, everything's downloadable. Yeah, you're spot on. Like everything's downloadable via the console now as well, right? So you can, you can play these games on desktop. You can download them on the console directly via these, stores. So yeah, it's insane how it's developed. But that's where it's become really interesting gaming, is because that opportunity for advertisers has evolved massively. So, you've got the likes of PlayStation, they've got their store, they can run things like sponsorships within that. Again, premium kind of walled gardens, which is, I think, great for advertisers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Venice, when was that?
So I think I joined Venice in 2014. So back in 2014.
So we've known each other for almost 5 years. So obviously the experience at Venice, and then you moved over to Playwire, right?
I spent a bit of time at One.
Okay.
Who, again, very similar model, sales house representing premium publishers. So they, I think they managed eBay UK, BT.com, BT Sport, Jamie Oliver. So a real mix of verticals there. So again, just use that experience from Venice to go to One to manage the programmatic there for them. And then after that, I went to Playwire.
Great. So what I'm getting at, I guess, is that mix of premium inventory, media, and then data.
Yeah.
And how data has evolved within the context of media sales, both in an owned and operated environment, in a network environment, and then as a standalone proposition, which ultimately will take us to your current position, which is on audience, pure play data exchange. But talk to me a little bit about that hybrid model, working in traditional media owner environments with a greater and greater focus on audience, on data, and on how advertisers and agencies can access the data. Yeah,
cool. So, when I was at Crimtan, as I said, the DMP was becoming, kind of the mainstay in the kind of, the way that the hype within the media industry, basically, it was the kind of the buzzword, so to speak. So, back then we were talking about ways of collecting data, optimizing based on the data and the audiences we can target to achieve the kind of KPI. And, at that time, I felt like a lot of people just didn't get it. It was because it was new. Every time there's something new, there's an opportunity to go out and educate and kind of, get traction in the market, get some tests going, get people to understand the benefits of data. It was a tough environment. And I think, that's that kind of way of selling data and managing campaigns, but also, as we talked about, the kind of current data exchange model has kind of been there that whole time now. But, what's always been important, and from my experience, was that publisher kind of first-party data-driven sale. So, when I first joined Venice, we were talking about how, going out and getting PMP set up, at kind of that infancy when agencies were really starting to drive programmatic. And the data was something that was not really being monetized. So it was that kind of at the time when we were saying, well, this data is, we own this data, we can sell this data exclusively, and it's our data. We're not giving it to other DMPs, we're not putting it into marketplaces that it can be monetized. So, back then we were looking at how can we segment those audiences, those users, and take them out and start getting advertisers to utilize or target those audiences. And that kind of, I think, was kind of the early stages when publishers were really starting to think about that. Again, it was still early and kind of took that experience from Venitus, and at Add to One, we actually partnered with Lotame. Mm-hmm. So we used Lotame to segment a couple of our premium publishers. So I think it's, from my experience, I've got kind of an understanding of how data can be utilized in many different ways. I think what's becoming more and more prevalent now is, we all know how big GDPR has been for the industry since May. And I think there's been a bit of caution about utilising data since then. And almost maybe first-party data has become the kind of go-to, because I think still there's a bit of a lack of understanding fully about what GDPR is and the capabilities within that. So I think, we all know that as data's evolved and data's become a key part of the media plan to drive performance and reach the right audiences, first-party data gives people assurances. And I think what we're seeing is, buyers are looking to the Googles of the world, the Facebooks, the Amazons, where, they think, well, because of GDPR, don't really understand how third-party data fits within that, so let's just utilise first-party data with our existing partners.
Yeah, well, I think those businesses that have the trifecta, that own the end consumer relationship, that have content, that have a strong stable of technology, and that also have advanced and sophisticated first-party data sets, are going to be increasingly important in, as you say, a GDPR world. Mm. What I'm interested in is, you spoke a little bit about the evolution of data within the publisher ecosystem, and I think publishers accessing first-party data sets and using those audience segments to be able to open up new inventory opportunities, to be able to take campaigns that potentially would have had a sell-through rate that was very high on various verticals within their own and operated inventory, and to be able to explore new inventory opportunities but looking at the same audience, gave publishers a really clear incremental revenue stream. What I'm coming across more and more is the evolution of second-party data, and as an agency, as a consultant, trying to get access to first-party data sets, publisher data sets rather, within our own environment, so that we can manipulate those assets, so that we can use those data sets for media decisioning and targeting outside of the publisher ecosystem. And there was a lot of talk about that 18 months ago, and we had solutions on the market like Lotame Syndicate, like Crux Link, which is now Salesforce Data Studio. Some solutions that were looking to better productize the way in which second-party data assets could be bought, sold. That doesn't really seem to have become a mainstream proposition for most buyers or sellers in the market today. And I'm wondering, I think you would have a good perspective coming from that media owner ecosystem to speak to maybe some of the risks, maybe some of the reticence behind publishers moving in that direction, where they're decoupling the data assets that they have from the inventory that they own and operate?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to your point, you're right. These products were there to help publishers monetize their data in another way than their existing strategies. I think what's happened is publishers kind of felt or cottoned onto the fact that first party data is really valuable, and that they want full control of that and want to monetize it in the ways they see fit. And I think there's a bit of a fear in the industry that if you're putting your data into another low-to-me product or crux product, that actually you're losing control of your data, or people are using your data in a way that feels that devalues your proposition.
You don't have full transparency.
They feel there's a lack of transparency, that maybe they don't fully trust those businesses. Those businesses might go out and say, we've got data from these publishers within our marketplace, so you should be accessing it potentially here, maybe for a lower price point, or maybe it gives them more scale through that model than going to the publisher directly. So I think there's an element of fear. Publishers want to have full control, and also it gives them more. It gives them more value in market. If they're going out and saying the only place you can access our data is via us only, then that's what a lot of publishers, I feel, have done. And they've just looked at becoming better at monetizing that data in-house. So scaling up on their programmatic teams, getting in data analysts, building specific data sets that are based on clients' needs. So just spending more time with the agencies. I feel like that's maybe how things have started to change from the publisher side.
And do you think that's the right strategy? If you were a publisher today, if you had valuable and differentiated data asset, would you be focusing on only providing access to that within your owned and operated inventory? Or would you be thinking about how you could decouple that data asset from your inventory? Because, from a buyer's perspective, it's a little bit frustrating. We know that there are audiences that have huge value. We know that there are data sets that are incredibly strategically important to our brands. Maybe the media proposition isn't quite aligned to the brand or a particular campaign messaging, but that data would be valuable, and we would be willing to pay a premium to access that data if we didn't have the restriction around inventory and media, and particularly working within the context of a large agency group with media commitments, with deals, with what can be quite complex structures around the way in which we work with media partners. Sometimes purely getting access to the data set and working with that data set in isolation is a better, cleaner methodology from a buy-side perspective.
Yeah, good point. My view is I think publishers might be missing a trick so it's great that it gives you that value and that kind of strength in market to go out and talk about how that data is only accessible by you, and it can help start those conversations. But I think there's been, for the past few years now, there's been a lot of talk about how publishers are fully struggling to make profit. There's so many publishers out there, there's so much competition. There's been a lot of talk about publishers doing as much as they can to make as much revenue as possible, to fund that content. They need premium content and it needs to be funded somehow. I think they'd be crazy not to look at other opportunities to monetize that data. I think the reality is they're fully in control of that. So the data that they pass, there should be a differentiator, I think, between the premium or the quality of data they can offer to that that's being passed out. But I think we have to remember they're fully in control. So that might mean that they don't have to pass all their data. They don't have to pass it. It could be that maybe there's strategic partnerships where they only pass some of their data and they keep what they do best and what they see as most premium.
Yeah.
Again, it's an element of flexibility, I think, there.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. I think that in terms of the way in which I've seen it evolve and the way in which I expect it to evolve, we'll have some kind of disparity in the way in which publishers think about data and this type of data strategy with respect to owned and operated versus decoupled. And I've seen already that, we have a set of publishers or media owners on one side of the fence that are very active and proactive around data and generating revenue streams in any way in which they can through the data assets that they have. And then there is another group of publishers and media owners that are more protective, that seek differentiated value, that couple data with inventory. So I think it could evolve in that way. But then, as you were saying, even within those publishers, you may find that there are mixed models in terms of the way in which they're providing access to audiences.
Exactly. There has to be some differentiating value when they're going out to market, right? Otherwise, if you're going out and saying, actually, you can buy our data or access our data through us, but actually we give exactly the same data and everything over to said partner, it's a bit of it's confusion for a buyer there. Buyers want things to be made easy for them, understand how they can access the data, the level of capability through one partner or another. So then you're right, there needs to be a clear message somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is that those publishers should be contractually covered by their partners. Their partners shouldn't be revealing that information.
Exactly.
They're covered by NDAs on that front.
Correct.
But also the reality of the sales game and the way in which these businesses position themselves is such that you're always going to bear a risk that that information finds itself into the open market. And even if it isn't transferred via the sales team of the data exchange, if it's not done through accident or malevolence, people make their own assessments, they make their own value judgments. And we used to walk into meetings when I was working with Blow2Me, and I knew exactly who was feeding into the data exchange, and I knew who wasn't feeding into the data exchange, and we would be told by agencies and traders and different buyers that, we can access X through your data set or Y through your data set because we've seen Blow2Me JavaScript on those web pages. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're feeding into the data exchange, but I think that, there's always going to be speculation around that. And as a third-party data provider, you have a responsibility to manage, first and foremost, the relationship that you have with your suppliers and ensure that they're protected in the market. Okay, so let's talk about our audience then.
Great.
The new venture, the new adventure.
Yeah, indeed. It's exciting.
So explain to everybody a little bit about what audience does.
Yeah, great. So I'll keep it quite simple and straightforward. So On Audience are a global data provider. We provide data to advertisers through the data exchange. We also have partnerships with leading DSPs. So you can access On Audience data via the likes of the Trade Desk, DBM, AppNexus, etc. And we also have branded data partnerships with other leading DMPs out there, such as Oracle, IOTA, Blow2Me. So if people are using those existing data sets, you can access On Audience in conjunction with them. And for us, we're at a stage where the company's growing, which is very exciting. I'm the first person in the UK, based out of Warsaw in Poland, which is the headquarters. Which is, I always get asked, that's a bit of an interesting location. They started in Poland. They've got a bit of heritage in Central Eastern Europe, which works really well for them. As kind of they grew, they started building profiles in 200 markets. So now you can access the data in 200 plus markets. We've got some really strong data in the UK. Also, the kind of EU top 5. Central Eastern Europe is big for us. The US is really big as well. And that's probably more to do with just the fact that it's a huge market and there's the sheer volume of people, but it's quite good for us. And what we'll see is we'll start scaling up in terms of people soon. So UK will get more people in. Hopefully we'll have offices in the US soon, and also APAC. So On Audience has kind of grown organically, slightly different to the traditional VC funded US business who grow rapidly.
Yeah.
But we're doing well in market. We're growing a lot, and all of this is driven by DMP technology.
So you have two aspects to the business. One is a SaaS play, technology focused around data management. The other is the data exchange, and one feeds the other.
Exactly. Well, they both work in tandem with each other. And I mean, for us, the approach is quite agnostic. So, we're not going out to market to say we're better than another data provider. it's more about working, as I said,
probably should be.
Well, for us, right, we've got, there's a lot of data businesses out there. There's some who are bigger than others who are huge. We work with these guys. So, we work with Oracle, we work with Lotus, we work with IOTA. So for us, it's about, I think, offering more value in custom audiences. So, we have a number of predefined audiences out there that sit in the DSPs that you can access, but there's thousands of those, through, with other partners as well. But where we see a real value is actually going out and building custom audiences that are exclusive for advertisers, whether that be in direct partnership with them or through existing partnerships that they may have with some of these other companies, the Lotus, the IOTA. So, as I said, we're quite new to the UK, and some of these guys are really established. So there's certain things there are certain things we do better. There will be things that they do differently to us. That's just the nature of media and competition. But we're looking for ways to work in conjunction with people, whether that's benefit agencies in ways they're not working currently. Maybe there's something we can add from a custom audience perspective that gives them additional value. And that's where we see us fitting in at the moment in the UK.
So at the minute, it's a more agnostic play in terms of distribution, having a number of different access points, whether that's through you directly or whether it's through partners. And I guess what's interesting about that is it mirrors what we were discussing earlier, is that's a bit of a mixed model in the sense that you're looking for distribution to get to market as quickly as possible, to give everybody as varied an access point as possible, but also you maintain a proprietary point of view in the sense that you can create and curate custom segmentation when advertisers or when agencies come and work with you directly. So you're maintaining that premium strategic perspective, but you're also allowing for standard segmentation to be distributed through the ecosystem via partnerships.
Yeah, exactly. There's data that's there. It's kind of off the shelf. You can just go and access specific verticals already. That's great. I think what we're finding, or what from my experience so far with an audience, is we're finding that going back to that 5-6 years ago, when I was talking about DMP and market and people didn't get it, it's that how quickly and how across the landscape it's become so prevalent and how everything's so data driven. And I think, it'd be foolish for me to think that, there's companies out there that aren't embedded within certain agency groups, certain advertisers. And I think that's where we're at the minute, is, it became a buzzword. It grew so quickly that it's almost quite a saturated market. Like there's certain providers who are dominating the DMP SaaS model space already. We're talking kind of 12, 18 month, 24 month models here with their contracts. So, once these guys are in, they're working with partners, it's quite tough to get in there and kind of carve your niche out or your part into that space. So, for us, or for an audience, it's about going out, evangelizing, educating, getting the name out there. We've got some really strong partnerships in place already with these leading players like Oracle, IOTA. We'll partner with some of the major DSPs. And as you said, we're looking to expand that distribution network with other partners as well. So it's just about going out there and telling people what we do and how we work and offering that value with the custom audiences driven by our technology.
Yeah, well, I mean, the SaaS side of the business is very different because of those contract terms. And there is a lot of first mover advantage within that ecosystem.
Right.
Crux came into the UK market 18 months before Lotome, and they took a huge chunk of the publisher space because they were hit first.
Yeah.
And that was true when they pivoted into the buy side of the market and started to work with advertisers and with agencies. We just found we were, speaking from Lotome's perspective, one step behind. And it's very, very difficult, as you say, to enter into a space where one technology provider has already captured a significant share of the market and is the brand, the known entity within that space. And the nature of the contracts, 24-month contracts, 36-month contracts, means it's very difficult to displace an incumbent. I think what's interesting is that may start to shift as some of those contracts now that were originally signed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, come up for renewal. And certainly what we saw is we had an opportunity to take a lot of business in that renewal period because people have different experiences working with their technology providers. Some of them have a lot of success, some of them don't see the value. And we certainly found that there was a proposition, a way in which we could insert ourselves into that conversation at the point of renewal. And I think that from a SaaS perspective, you guys would probably have an opportunity to look to do that, as some of those contracts go through second generation, third generation, and continue to iterate. The data exchange ecosystem is a far more variable model, so it's more campaign driven. But even then, I'd be interested to get your opinion. But the way in which I see that evolving is, maybe 3 to 5 years, that brands take a far more active role in building out their own marketplaces, their own data partnerships, and investing directly with partners. So I actually see a scenario, given that the current state of the nation is that brands are currently investing in a lot of the technology that would facilitate better access to data, better aggregation and unification of data, and ultimately better management of data. I see a situation evolving where advertisers and brands will begin to look at the actual source and the third-party partners that they're working with, the second-party partners that they're working with, and they'll start to invest directly in that ecosystem. So it could be that 3 to 5 years' time, you're working directly with brands to create custom segmentation to pass into their own data environments as opposed to working via an agency.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think the trend currently, and we're seeing more and more, is that you're right, advertisers are starting to bring programmatic in-house, and they're scaling up teams, they're employing people from some smart ad tech programmatic businesses, from the agencies as well. So they've got a holistic view of how programmatic works within the media plan. I think what's going to get really interesting is obviously that the advertiser and the publisher are always the end point. They're essentially the owners of the spend and the owners of where the media is delivered. And obviously all the ad tech companies, the agencies, we all sit in the middle managing it on their behalf. So what's going to be really interesting is, you've got the agencies who are going to be moving in-house, managing their data, and you're still going to have the publishers endpoint who are going to say, we've got our own data as well.
Yeah.
So then what's going to be really interesting, you're right, is whether there's going to be more, partnership or combining with these guys.
I hope so. I think that would be the right thing to do. I think that in my future state, I think we have a lot more corroboration and cooperation between publishers that own that direct to consumer relationship, that are building out the content, and advertisers that are obviously seeking to put the right message in front of the right person at the right time. I think that if we can get to a position where advertisers have a very clear understanding of their own data and technology infrastructure, and they are looking at what are the best ways in which we can source the most accurate data sets, we could very well see a situation where advertisers are looking to build a handful, 5 to 10, very strategic relationships with tier 1, tier 2 publishers to get access to highly accurate, highly efficacious data sets that can be ported directly into their own environments. The publisher builds that relationship. They have a very strong partnership in place with the brand, so they're happy. And the brand has a clear incentive to source accurate and high veracity data segmentation from those publishers.
Yeah, I think interesting. I think you're always going to have, though, agree, things, it's always going to evolve massively and could well go that way. Where the likes of On Audience fit and other players is, we've got data at scale. So, whereas you're getting these first party data sets from publishers or advertiser data sets, there's only going to be so much scale on that. So I think, where we come in is we've got a holistic view and offer huge scale globally. So there's obviously something to be said there, I think, with partnering with technology companies like ourselves who can obviously help you understand those audiences at scale. So whether it be some kind of matching or, some kind of lookalike model, that's kind of where I think all companies like Audience and Oracle and other guys would still be fit within that.
And particularly when you start to look at Central and Eastern Europe, when you start to look at some of the markets across APAC, when you start to look into some of the markets in LATAM, it's very well and good building out data strategies in North America and the UK and the EU5, because generally speaking, you can access data in those markets, but there is a huge drop off when you start to look into some of the other markets, and if we're planning and buying, across multiple markets globally, we need to have partners that can provide coverage across a broad range of different markets, not just the major 5 to 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you've got an event coming up at the end of this month, right?
Yeah, so we've got our annual breakfast event out in Warsaw. So we invite together some of the leading advertisers and agencies in Poland to the event. So it's a breakfast event, usually runs about 3 or 4 hours. We have some panel-based discussions, a couple of presentations, and just talk about what's going on in the data market and get the views of everyone there, really. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, look forward to having you. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do a panel or something like that. You and I on stage. So
very good.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
If it's half as good as this, we'll be well underway.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be good. And we're also out at Mexico in September.
Great.
So if anyone's attended Mexico, we're looking to meet more people out there, existing clients, but also new clients as well.
Perfect. I'll provide a link to the website on the blurb for this video as well. So if anybody wants to follow up with you, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your opinions on the industry.
Yeah, really good to chat to you. Well, I think it's good to get these conversations going and get some ideas out there.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Cheers, Miles.